Members, I'll make it 6 o'clock, so we'll get started. Good evening, members, to this council meeting of Wyre Forest District Council. This meeting is being held remotely and is being webcast on the council streaming page. Do remember, please, to keep your devices on mute when you're not speaking to cut out any background noise. We'll get on to the agenda item, prayers, and we welcome back again Reverend Robert Legg, Team Vicar for the parish of Kidderminster East. Good evening, Reverend Legg.
Good evening, everybody, and it's lovely to be back with you again, albeit briefly for the start of your meeting this evening. So let's come before God in prayer. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for every screen that has been filled here this evening. Thank you for the technology that means we can still meet as a council in these difficult and challenging times. For each mind and each heart that fills the presence of this meeting, we thank you. You know what we are setting out to accomplish this evening. We have our ideas, our agendas, our visions. We have talents, abilities, and time to work. However, only you see in detail the end of every beginning, every project, every season, every life. We thank you that nothing we do in your name is ever in vain, for even mistakes and missteps are used for your good. And so strengthen our confidence in you, who have made us both to be as individuals and as a council. Help us to work together efficiently, remembering those whom we serve. And so bless this meeting tonight, all those who are present, all those who cannot be with us. Be with those that we will encounter afterwards. Help us to make every moment and every decision count. Amen. And we finish our prayers this evening by praying the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you. Well, it's been lovely to be with you, and all the best for your meeting this evening. Hope all goes well.
Thank you, Reverend. I understand that you've got a busy schedule ahead of you, so we won't.
So must depart. Thank you very much. All the best, everybody. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Members, I do have another notice to make, which is that I need to advise you of one change to tonight's business. The report on the polling place review at item 11 has been withdrawn. This is because it has become clear that there was an error on the website which could have affected the responses that some respondents gave. A detailed note will be sent to all members to explain this. I understand that the consultation will now be rerun and a full report brought to the next meeting of the council. On to agenda item 2. Are there any apologies for absence?
We have no apologies for absence.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest by members? Item 3. I can't see any hands. That's no. Thank you. Members, just another reminder then, if you wish to speak, you need to raise your virtual blue hand, and assisting me today with calling names for speakers will be Mike Parker. So agenda item 4, minutes of the meeting. Can I have a proposer for those minutes? Councillor John Thomas. You're on mute, John.
happy to move the minutes of the 23rd of September as a true and correct record, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. And then a seconder, Councillor Susie Griffiths.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second those minutes as true and accurate.
Thank you. Thank you. Members, is it your wish that I sign these as a true record of the meeting held on 23rd of September 2020? If you could raise your hands. Louisa, could you confirm that's
been agreed, Chairman.
Thank you. Agenda item 5. There is no public participation tonight. On to agenda item 6, questions which appear on page 15. Councillor Anna Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the Cabinet Member for Culture, Leisure and Community Protection. With an aim to safeguard the future of the Bewdley Museum and the Guildhall and give a reassurance to the taxpayers, would Cabinet Member agree to investigate a right of first refusal to Wyre Forest District Council or other community organisations, funding partners, with a public consultation prior to a right of first refusal being exercised? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Helen Dyke.
Thank you. Good evening and thank you for your question, Councillor Anna Coleman. As I have repeated at Overview and Scrutiny Cabinet and the recent Bewdley Management Committee on December the 1st, we as a council are approaching the establishment of Bewdley Museum as a fully independent trust in a positive way. I was also pleased to hear the comments made by some members of the Management Committee on December the 1st, who also saw it as a positive way forward. I again repeated at that meeting, this is not Wyre Forest District Council walking away, and that the council envisaged entering a grant agreement with the museum, and our hope is that Bewdley Museum will continue to be successful for the residents of Bewdley and the wider Wyre Forest for many, many years to come. I will investigate the idea of a right of first refusal that you mentioned in your question, but feel that I must remind you at this point that Cabinet has already taken the decision at its meeting on the 10th of November not to include a reversion clause as part of this project, and so may, after investigation, be in the same position with regard to a right of first refusal. I would ask if you could supply me with any contact details, which I imagine would include Bewdley Town Council, for those bodies or organisations you feel would like to be considered with regard to being contacted as part of a discussion on your request. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dyke. On to question number 2, Councillor Lee Whitehouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Council, and good evening to members of the public watching at home. My question is to the leader. Does the leader believe he has the resilience required to perform the role of leader of the council during this pandemic?
Councillor Ballinger.
Thank you, Chairman. Is that coming through okay? Yep, it is.
Yes.
Fine. Yep, thanks. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Whitehouse, for your interest. The answer is yes. Thank you.
Question number 3, in fact, from Councillor Whitehouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can the leader describe what he and his cabinet are doing to address the financial position?
Councillor Ballinger.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is a surprising question because, in fact, we've been very open with what we're proposing to do. It's all contained in the medium-term financial strategy. There's been considerable debate about it. Went to Cabinet on the 10th of last month, in fact. So lots of opportunity for you to read them. It's just you take the opportunity to have another look at them. It's well laid out there for all to see. Thank you.
Thank you. And question 4 from Councillor Whitehouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last question is, can the leader make assurances that he will do everything in his power to ensure that all Wyre Forest District Council members of staff, I should say, will not be made redundant and local residents are supported, given the probability that many of them have or will face losing their homes and livelihoods. Thank you.
Councillor Ballinger.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, no, I shouldn't think any leader in the country would be prepared to make that sort of a reassurance at this stage with the financial climate that all local authorities are facing. Yeah, we're doing all we can to help. We will be looking to save as many jobs as possible, and moving forward, we will continue to support people in the community in the way that we've been doing now for several months due to the hard work of our revenue and benefits staff. So we're doing okay, but thank you again for your interest.
Thank you, Councillor Ballinger. Agenda item 7, these are the Chairman's communications, and clearly they're quite bare. I'd just like to thank my Vice Chair for attending the Remembrance Sunday, as I was unwell on that day to do so. On to agenda item 8, Leader of the Council announcements, Councillor Graham Ballinger.
Thank you again, Chairman. I did manage to circulate today a written copy of this report to save Louisa scribbling away. Really, COVID-19 has dominated all of our actions in the last few months. We've had a time where local communities and the council have all been affected. We've had a second lockdown recently. The whole of Worcestershire remains in tier 2. Again, with this awful social media at times, there was a rumour yesterday we were moving into tier 1. Totally fake news. No chance of that at the moment. There will be a review coming up shortly. We've got to be careful we don't go into tier 3. So the caution that everybody, all of us need to stress to our family, friends and people in our wards is to be cautious over Christmas. I think at a personal level, it's madness going for this Christmas, everybody getting together, because inevitably, I mean, all of the experts are saying there'll be a peak then in January and February. So let's hope that those experts are wrong. At the moment, we've been in line for a while with the Worcestershire figures. We have slipped a little bit below them today, and today since that was written. But in a sense, we've gone above them. So we're above the average for Worcestershire at the moment. And certainly the over 60s bit is we're not looking good. That's continued to rise. But it's the 3 district councils in the north of the county that are causing the issues. And it's put on the fact that their proximity to Birmingham, and that's Bromsgrove, Redditch and ourselves. We mustn't be complacent, and you know it's going to affect us when the restrictions are reviewed next on the 16th of this month. It's great that families will be able to get together, but as we say, that you know there could be a penalty for that come the early new year. The vaccine started to be rolled out yesterday, and we're hearing today of 1 or 2 people having reactions to it. I hope that doesn't set people into the panic mode, because inevitably this is the way forward for us to try and address this awful pandemic. The council continues obviously delivering all our services. Our staff have been magnificent throughout at all levels, not picking out people individually or departments individually, because at all levels of our council, we can be proud of our staff and the way they've operated in very difficult circumstances throughout the pandemic. And, you know, we hope that that continues. The one issue was the closure of the museum that was required during the national lockdown, and the shop, you know, introduced a call and collect service. So I think they're open again. The waste collection teams were, despite everything that was going on, managing to get round, and with lots of compliments. We've had lots of compliments for our staff teams at all levels. COVID has affected our staff and their families in the way that it has probably every family in the country. Everybody knows somebody or a family who've been affected by this evil pandemic. Particularly at the moment, the Worcestershire Regulatory Services, which my colleague Helen Dyke sits on their board, are making as part of the One Worcestershire response, supporting work of test and trace and undertaking enforcement work, and also hosting the COVID advisors, the people that will be out on the streets and are out on the streets advising people about social distancing and the like. They've got a tough job on at the moment, but they seem to be coping. We're doing better locally than if we try and bring people in or private companies to do that. We're doing it ourselves, and that's excellent. We've got a lot more grants and businesses going through Revs and Bends. I did mention them just now, and also through the North Worcestershire, the NEDR as we call it, the North Worcestershire Economic Development and Regeneration. They're actually based in Wyre Forest House, but they cover the whole of North Worcestershire. And that's in addition, obviously, to the £500 grants, which I mentioned there on self-isolation, and that's current. Next week, we're publishing the draft medium-term financial strategy, which I referred to just now in my response to Councillor Whitehouse. And that sets out the latest estimates, because they're changing almost daily, what's coming through from central government in terms of money. I mean, at the moment, we're in quite a bit of debt as a result of promises that, you know, some of the money hasn't come through that we were expecting, but we've got our fingers crossed that they'll honour many of these promises. And that will be good. And the steps that our alliance have taken in proposing to address it are well laid out in that document, but many of you attended the Special Members Forum, which we laid on to give you the opportunity to ask questions on those documents, and many of you did ask those questions. We'll continue to discuss these with the other groups through the strategic review panel meetings in January, and building on the briefing and discussion of last month's Members Forum that I've just referred to. Spending review by central government is it's not looking good at the moment. It looks as if it would be 2% restriction. We'd like to spend a lot more. In fact, our recent consultation exercise, which was well responded to throughout the district, people were quite happy to pay a lot more than that, would you believe, in order to maintain their services. And we had quite a high response as well. It was encouraging. But we won't be doing that because the government are limiting all councils to a certain figure anyway, which isn't a bad thing. There'll further single year allocation. We haven't been building many houses in the last year or two, and that's obviously a lot to do with COVID, but it's also because we didn't have many on the books ready to build, and there's a lot of land is owned by people who are not building on it. They're waiting for the prices to go up, and it's a shame the government can't do about that, something about that and sorting it out. The other issue that we've got complications with at the moment is the leisure centre, which we still own, but is run by Places Leisure, the private company, on our behalf. Now, obviously, with it closing and then opening and then closing and then it's open again, the government offered 100 million towards councils and towards helping those situations. And we're paying out a lot of money at the moment because their income is devastated. They offered this a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago, the government, and there's still nothing come through. And there's some debate with Sport England about that. So we're waiting to see. We're fingers crossed. We're in discussions with the Sport England and with the Leisure Centre about that, and hopefully when it comes through, and we better get in an application towards supporting some of our costs. Negotiations with the unions now about pay and grading review were completed just yesterday, and the unions will now consult with their members. It's hoped that a positive result will be achieved, and the collective agreement can then be ratified by council in February. February is the big meeting. We'll be doing that, and we'll be setting the budget for next year, for the financial year 21-22. In respect to the place shaping and regeneration, this is the devolution bit that we've heard about. Has been hinted at time and time again over the last 12 months, but it keeps getting kicked further down the road. And at the moment, there's speculation that it won't be before the county elections in May. I can't quite see why that should be. But it will be after that now, it looks like. And then we'll be coming back to local authorities, but it could even be the following year. So we don't know about that. The other thing that's happening locally shortly will be the inspector's inquiry on our local plan. And that starts next month. So we will be watching that with interest. The road scheme is looking good at Churchfields, and the county have done well in getting that. I believe it's on time, and it is looking very good. It's also good to see our own units on Silverwood's Ways, the Silverwood site, nearing completion. They've been building those for a long time. In September, I told council that the government's decision on the important Future High Streets Fund, again, we've been promised a decision on this on and off. First of all, it was going to be spring, then midsummer, then late summer, then autumn. Now it's midwinter, and it still hasn't arrived. So it could be that they're still scratching around for a little more cash, but it's a big bid. It's a huge bid that we put in. A lot of hard work gone into it, and we would hope we'll get something positive soon. And finally, can I just comment about social media? I do think it's a shame that some of us resort to social media, and I don't think it's good. It looks good for the image of the council. It doesn't look good for the image of local government in general. And even though social media can have its benefits, I think if we could try and make a resolution for next year, perhaps to be kinder to everybody and to listen to other people's points of view, and not just sit down with the keyboard warriors in an evening and just hammer away, because the public don't want to see that. They don't want to see that. They want to see us getting on and delivering services. So I'd wish everybody, obviously, a happy Christmas, and your families, and to the staff, and to the voluntary groups throughout the district, because without them, we'd never cope. And the voluntary groups, the churches, everybody else. But at the end of the day, it's our responsibility to come up with proposals and ideas for the council to get us through this financial crisis. It's probably the worst for 300 years in terms of cash available to public sector bodies. So let's pull together, not just one Worcestershire, but one Wyre Forest. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ballinger. On to agenda item 9, we have one motion which has been received in accordance with standing orders. Councillor Marcus Hart.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman, and a very good evening to all members. The notice of motion which I will present on behalf of the Conservative Group briefly for the viewers at home is as follows. Given that the coronavirus restrictions are likely to be with us for some time, and given that social distancing requirements, it is highly likely, if not impossible, even at 1 metre apart, to hold a meeting of full council physically, given the number of people that would need to be present in the council chamber, and that all members are now fully acquainted with Zoom and how virtual meetings work. And in the interest of democracy, this council resolves to reverse the emergency constitutional amendments made at our extraordinary meeting of full council on the 21st of April in respect of the length of virtual meetings of full council and all other such meetings of the council, and the other such amendments in respect of limiting the number of notices of motion and for members' questions, and return to the previous full suite of constitutional arrangements in respect of all democratic areas of the council, including planning, and resolves that the Chief Executive and Solicitor of the Council take the necessary steps for implementation by the 31st of December 2020. And then let me comment, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Clearly, we are a democratic organisation, and indeed the leader of the council made some very pertinent comments about social media, and the leader of the council and I don't agree on all matters, but I think we are united in our view about how tricky social media can be. I think the leader might have been referring to his deputy in that New Year's resolution as well, amongst a number of others. I'm certainly not guilty of that. And it's absolutely right that this is the place for democratic debate in an open and transparent way. Now, I know, for example, that the leader and the deputy leader of the council, and indeed the Progressive Alliance, want to be open and transparent. It was the wording that was used when they took office in May 2019. We're going to do things differently. This is a new administration. Well, my group feel that actually, when push comes to shove, it's all words and no action. Clearly, when the pandemic struck, it was absolutely right that this council united was of one, because we are here to serve the electorate, not ourselves. And the public at the best of times don't like politicians making cheap political jibes at each other and potshots. They want us to all work collectively for the benefit of our community. And I endorse that. It was right that we did that. And in fact, it was me at a telephone group leaders meeting on the 7th of April that suggested that we reduce to 2 notices of motion and that we confine ourselves to reduced question time, albeit with supplementaries. Indeed, this was the subject of a briefing note on the 10th of November. I'm not sure who drafted the briefing note, but it did helpfully set out that some of the meetings, council in July went over 4 hours, scrutiny was 3 hours 44 minutes in this earlier on this year, and another meeting over 2 hours as well. Now, there was a note to say that at May, July and September, and certainly May and September, that there were no questions asked, and there were only 2 in July. Well, this, of course, is deliberate. It shouldn't in any way be used as a rationale or explanation to say, well, you're not asking questions now, so why are you worried about going back to the previous arrangements? The reason is twofold. Firstly, we weren't asking questions vehemently in the early days because of the reasons I said. We wanted to unite because there were more pressing and real issues about. But secondly, in a democratic organisation, I'm sure because the leader and the deputy leader and others made a pretty good job of it when I was the leader and when I led the council, at holding us to account, asking question after question and having the right of a supplementary. Frankly, there is no point in my view asking a question if you can't put a supplementary. I could have predicted what was going to happen when Councillor Whitehouse asked his questions, and I could have predicted the manner in which they were going to be answered. And it's very undemocratic when Councillor Whitehouse, whether I agree with the questions or not, whether I agree with the sentiment, but, you know, he ought to properly be entitled to a right of reply and to drill down into some of the detail. That's what a transparent and democratic organisation is about. And we do question what on earth of this Progressive Alliance, in all that they promised and campaigned for and all that they've said, got to be afraid of. What could be possibly harmful about allowing an elected member the opportunity to ask a supplementary? There are other amendments to the Constitution in respect of how planning applications get triggered before a committee, and there are all other arrangements as well. And it seems a bit of a farce at meetings when we have to suspend standing orders, because the whole idea in the early days of a virtual meeting is that it wouldn't go over 2 hours. So we have really broken our own rules, so to speak, by suspending the standard orders in order for us to be constitutionally correct. In the early days, I'd never used Zoom, and I suspect many members of this council hadn't either. But now, at a time when this is the new norm, and we could be doing this until May or beyond, or some date in the future, why isn't it business as usual? At Worcestershire County Council, in another place where some members of this council sit, we have reverted to following the absolute constitutional arrangements. And there was an outcry in the press by certain dual hatters arguing that the county council was being unconstitutional, when at the last meeting it now follows the constitutional rules. And I firmly believe, on behalf of the group, but not on behalf of me or my group really, in the interests of democracy, in the interests of all of the taxpayers out there who we serve, quite properly, we should revert back to the constitutional arrangements. And I'm really surprised there wasn't more of an appetite to support this when we discussed it at group leaders. And of course, the Conservative group has been left with little, if any, option but to bring this notice of motion, which I'm saddened that we've had to do, and would hope that there would be an element of support from all elected members, because we're all honest, decent, transparent, hardworking members. And what could be so difficult about going back to how we were before? And therefore, in all the circumstances, I so move the notice of motion and implore others to support this and indeed contribute to the debate. And finally, we would request a named vote, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, can I take a seconder on the motion? Councillor Desmond, your hand was up first. Are you going to be seconding this motion, first of all? And also, Councillor Hart, if you're going to summarise, could I ask you just to raise your blue hand? I won't call you until the end, but if you do want to summarise, if you could raise your blue hand.
I'll do that now, Chairman.
Yes, that's great. Councillor Desmond.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes, go on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, members and anybody else tuning in. Let me formally second the motion as printed, Mr. Chairman, and can I reserve my right, please?
Yes. So if you wish to keep your blue hand raised, I'll call you right at the end before I call Councillor Hart. Mike, if I can have the next speaker, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I believe that's me, Councillor Hardiman, and good evening.
Yes.
Chairman, it was expedient during the lockdown to introduce constitutional amendments, but members are now well acquainted with Zoom usage, and hence a kind of normal practice has developed, which I believe allows Council to revert to the previous constitutional arrangements, both for full Council and, for example, planning. Chairman, I do urge members to support what is a reasonable motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hardiman. Next speaker, Councillor Peter Young.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, everyone. Yes, Councillor Hart makes some very good points, and we want time for discussion. But as in everything, I think we need to strike a balance. These meetings have been going very well, thanks to the excellent support we're getting from our IT section. But I think a Zoom meeting can never replace a proper live meeting, and some modifications are needed. And I think the ones that were made at the start, I think were quite reasonable and proportionate, because I'll be honest with you, I'm not keen on staring at a screen, even though I'm given the opportunity of listening to some excellent arguments, excellent discussion for more than 2 hours at a time, if I can avoid it. Sometimes it's unavoidable. And I think the restrictions that were put in at the start, I think were reasonable and proportionate. And I'm not aware of anyone, particularly from the opposition, who've not been given the opportunity to make the points that they've made very articulately. And I think we shouldn't be allowing these meetings to go on ad infinitum, as we have done on occasion with proper live meetings. And we need to be brief, and I hope I've been brief enough in making this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Mike, if you're there, are you able to call the next speaker for me?
Yes, apologies, Chairman. I thought I'd unmuted previously, but I hadn't. It's Councillor Borski.
Thank you, and good evening, Chairman, and good evening, Council. Now, some of us are in regular contact via Zoom, via the LGA, with councillors from across the country. But if you actually look across the country, a very large number of councils have reduced their meetings to 2 hours maximum, and some councils, including the City of Birmingham, have actually changed their standing orders so that no motions at all are allowed while council is meeting remotely. Worcestershire County Council has been mentioned. Yes, it holds daytime meetings as 2 separate meetings, one for roughly 2 hours in the morning and one for roughly 2 hours in the afternoon, with a 35 or 45-minute break between the two. And yes, Worcestershire County Council allows more than 2 motions. But as my colleague, Councillor Mary Rayner, will confirm, what happens at county these days is that the first motion to be taken is always an administration one. It is quite often something that is, well, it's almost like we believe in sunshine tomorrow. I mean, we had one totally anodyne, such as we all value our rivers and canals. This is used as an excuse for at least 20 members of the administration to stand up and make 3 or 4 minute speeches about how wonderful the river, the canal, the brook, or whatever that runs through their division is, all of them naming it, so that what actually happens during the time set aside for motions at Worcestershire County Council is that much more vital and important issues that should be policy submitted by opposition councillors are not even reached on the agenda. And there are some of us on Worcestershire County Council who are getting more than a little bit sick and tired of that process, which is why there were some pretty narky comments made in the press recently after the last Worcestershire County Council meeting. On the matter of questions, there is one practice that I would copy and recommend from the County Council, which is the fact that no member can submit more than 2 questions at county, and you have to say in which order you want them taken. And if there are 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 members with questions, you all get to ask your first question, and you are very unlikely to get to ask your second question, though they do start going round again. Yes, the County Council does allow supplementaries, but what has been increasingly obvious during the time of lockdown is that what happens is you ask your question, and some cabinet members, not necessarily Councillor Hart, but some county council cabinet members have been known to take well over 5 minutes answering the first question, and then are very dismissive of the supplementary. So I really, from my own personal experience, I will leave it to Councillor Rayner if she wishes to comment on her experience, but from my own personal experience, I would not want this council to go down the route followed by the County Council. I don't think that is good practice. I don't believe that we should be normally taking more than 2 hours on a Zoom meeting. I just don't think it's really feasible. If we're going to do that, we will have to do, I think, what the County Council does and give ourselves a 30-minute or so break between sessions, which I don't think is really fair on officers, because at least county meetings are in the daytime, and taking a long break, although we might need it after 2 hours, is not fair on our officers who already worked a full day. So on balance, I would say that members should reject this motion. We are working perfectly well as we are, and I don't think it's appropriate to change. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Borski. Next speaker, please.
Councillor Onslow.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair, and good evening, Council. I can understand what Councillor Young and Councillor Borski are saying, but these meetings are only once every 2 months, so it's not as if we're going to be sat here day after day after day. And I think with the new administration in, more than ever, we need to be able to properly hold to account. And I think what's happened this evening with the Gainsborough polling station report is an absolutely classic example. You know, we've done a consultation, no mandate, shoved a consultation through, still no mandate, not the answer what we want, so we pulled the report again and we're going to put it back again. And I, as the member, the longest serving member in that area, won't be able to ask any supplementary questions because we've altered standing orders. No more time than ever do we need to be able to properly hold the administration to account, and we can't do that without being able to ask questions and ask supplementary questions. Nobody on here has anything to hide. We're all quite capable of answering questions and explaining what we've done. So I don't see any issue with us putting this motion through to go back to how we were before. Now we're all used to using Zoom. Some of our meetings have gone on for hours, and if they were every week, I could understand. But full council is once every couple of months. Nothing to hide. We should be very, very comfortable in putting this motion through, and I hope that we all support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please, Mike.
Councillor Rayner.
Thank you, and good evening, Chairman, good evening, Council, good evening, general public. I would like to endorse what Councillor Oborski said about what we are doing. I think on the whole, we're trying to keep a balance here, and it's not always done so in other arenas. And I have got somebody in my group at county who was really upset because they did not have their full 2 minutes to actually support a proposal. So time is challenging with this Zoom meetings and that, and I think on the whole we're trying to do our best under the circumstances, and I don't see that unless we actually have a sort of brief interlude between in sections, which, as Councillor Oborski said, it's unfair on our officers who've had long days. County, you can do it. It's not so easy here, but people do get tired with Zoom, just looking at a screen all the time with no relief. And in fact, one of the things is that when you are working on computers, you should in fact, and there is evidence to support this, you should in fact have a rest period about every 45 minutes. With these Zoom meetings, it's very intense, and you cannot keep going back to what we used to do for the time being. There will be a time when things get better and we may be able to review it, but I think at the moment we are a little premature, and I fully support what Councillor Oborski said. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. I do not understand why my constitutional right and my elected position as a councillor is being stifled by the fact that I'm sitting at home doing a Zoom meeting instead of sitting in a council chamber, because all the people who are involved in this meeting, including the staff and officers, would always be involved in the meetings anyway. There's no difference between doing it on Zoom or doing it in the council chamber. What is different is the fact that we're using this as an excuse to stifle people and to stifle the opinion and to draw out the actual truth of what's going on. When you can't ask a supplementary question, it means that the answer cannot be pre-formulated. When a question is put down and written on the paper in the actual agenda, the person who has that question has time to research and has time to make their answer formulated out and read it out off paper. When they are physically challenged on the spot, they have to actually use what's in their head. They have to use their knowledge. And if that means that shows that some people are not able to do that, and shows their possible downfalls, then so be it. As a councillor, I stand for my area, and I want to be able to ask the questions that we're allowed to. What happens at Worcester County Council is not a matter for me. I'm not a county councillor. I'm a Kidderminster Town Councillor and a Wyre Forest District Councillor, and all I want to do is see that actually the general public get what we're elected for, and that is to get to the bottom of what's going on. And if we can't ask questions, then that isn't actually getting to a democratic vote, is it? Regards to the 2 hour thing, whilst I totally agree that in any council meeting that goes over the 2-hour mark, a comfort break is always welcomed, because you can't sit here at any meeting, dry as a bone and not have a drink, or drink and then not be able to go to the loo. However, there is nothing to stop us still having a 5-minute interlude break for everybody to have a comfort break, whether you're sitting in a council chamber or sitting at home on a Zoom screen. This is actually much more comfortable. My family are downstairs eating their dinner. You know, I am actually at home. I'm not out in the cold, gone out to the council chamber. I just totally don't think that this council is that we're actually using this as an excuse at the moment. And I think that we should all just reel it back in and actually get back to reality. If this is the reality for today and for the time being, then let's get democracy back into the room, please.
Thank you. Next speaker, please, Mike.
Councillor Gale.
Right, that's just proved that not everybody's got to grips with Zoom. However, I've managed it. In regards to stifling the democratic way in which we've always worked within Wyre Forest District Council, I have on times asked questions and then realised that the answer that I've been given, I need to go back and ask again because I haven't really quite understood it. There's an old saying, isn't there? Hide the truth in waffle. And sometimes I need to go back and have it confirmed so that if the question has been asked by any of my residents, I can go back and fully explain. Now, I appreciate everything about officers being at work all day, 2-hour Zoom meetings, the health and safety side of it, and everything else like that. I'm having to deal with it on a daily basis at work. And if I look around the council chamber, there's a great proportion of us that have already done a full-time job and now are sitting at home, albeit in their comfort, but we are now going into doing a council meeting. So I'm a bit confused why that was put aside as one of the arguments for not getting our standing orders back to where it is. Some of us haven't got the experience of sitting on other council forums, and I will echo what Councillor Hart said when he was doing the motions. I'm absolutely sickened at the moment by the outrage that is going on social media. If we need to have things challenged, we need to be doing it in an appropriate forum, which is a council meeting, if it is to do with council policy. I am not going to get involved with any of the name calling, any of the slating of the parties or anything else like that, because I feel personally it's a breach of our code of conduct as councillors. This is the arena to get it all sorted. This is the arena where the answers should be coming forth with, not social media, and not having it all pre-populated so that nobody can look as if they are not understanding what their job role is. I'm getting really sickened by the reliance on COVID as a crutch to take away my democratic right as a councillor to be able to ask the question, and I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Gale. I'm going to take Councillor Rogers, then I'm going to go back to Nathan to ask him whether he wishes to speak, and then my plan is to put it to vote. So we'll take Councillor Rogers next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, Council. If we like to go back in time a little bit to the days when the Conservatives ran the council and were the controlling group, I can only begin to imagine the uproar that we would have received if we'd have decided to suspend to suspend the right of democratic debate. Those who are currently in administration would have been screaming from the rooftops that the wicked Tories were trying to stifle debate and destroy democracy. This seems to be what's happening right now with the restrictions we are suffering. All we are asking for with this motion is to have proper democracy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Rogers. So there are no other speakers. Councillor Desmond, did you wish to speak?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's not forget that full council is the highest sovereign body of this authority, and therefore democracy and accountability, which is holding the executive to account, must be served. And obviously, on the back of that, Mr. Chairman, asking questions and asking supplementaries to the executive is a key tenet of those principles. And as what Councillor Hart and others have set out, we as an opposition group absolutely got the rationale back in April to the changes to the Constitution. On the actual supplementary part of it, we didn't agree with that, but we thought we would be the bigger person and support the wider package of measures that went through at that special council. We have now had over 6 months, which is a reasonable time to evaluate the situation, and democracy and accountability is simply not being served. To curb backbench councillors from asking a supplementary to the executive is simply unjustifiable. And I have heard nothing from the PA, and I see that the leader hasn't spoke on this issue, which is regrettable, but I have heard nothing from the PA that is a coherent argument to continue the current practice. And let's not forget, Mr. Chairman, that this came from an administration that came to power wanting to be more inclusive, more open, more transparent, and wanted to do things differently. In fact, the opposite is happening. They are using the excuse of COVID to close down executive accountability and challenge. There were some excellent questions tonight, and I could have written the script really what those answers would have been. Obviously, they've come from officers, and they were read as I thought they would have been. The key to those questions was in the supplementary, and unfortunately, there were no supplementary. And you have to ask yourself, Mr. Chairman, why do we continue with this? For what purpose does it serve? Because it does not serve democracy, it does not help opposition councillors, and it does not serve accountability. As far as I can see it, it only serves to protect the cabinet, to shield them from answering difficult questions. And actually, it makes the cabinet members look weak. It makes them look like they are running scared. And can you imagine, I absolutely agree what Councillor Rogers has said, can you imagine the outrage had this come from a Tory administration? Can you imagine what the likes of Councillor Ballinger, Councillor Borski and Councillor Dyke in particular would be saying right now had they gone 6 months without asking a supplementary? And let's not forget that Councillor Borski was recently quoted in the Worcester News complaining about a democratic deficit at the county, which Councillor Hart has touched upon, in the fact that Cabinet members' annual report was limited to 30 minutes. And here's what Councillor Franaborski actually said, actually was quoted. She said, talk about the death of local democracy. Basically, they are stopping opposition councillors from holding them to account. It's an insult to democracy. It is an absolute disgrace, says the deputy leader of Wyre Forest, who has prevented opposition councillors from asking
Councillor Desmond, can I just, you've probably gone over your 3 minutes, but I just wanted to bring the solicitor to the council in just now.
Why?
Just for an issue, to clarify an issue. Caroline, did you want to come in now? Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. The last speaker did name the deputy leader by name.
I did,
and
yes.
She has a right to respond just on that particular point, please, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Caroline. Yes, Nathan, Councillor Desmond, if you can wrap it up.
Yes. The time aspect that a number of members have said, for me, is a complete and utter red herring. Democracy and accountability has to be served. And if we have to go over the 2 hours, then so be it. We have 5 meetings a year of full council. We have had many, many meetings run over the 2 hours. Many full councils over the years have gone on for 3, if not 4 hours. When we were in administration, it is not the issue. Yes, we need to be more effective. And if we need to have a break at Zoom, then so be it. But please do not hamper and prevent and curb accountability and the democratic process in the name of time, because it is a complete and utter red herring. And I formally second the motion as printed.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Oborski.
Thank you, yes. I was named. Right. The specific issue about Worcestershire County Council that was raised. At the County Council, every cabinet member, it's either every year or every 2 years, produces a full report to council on the activities of the area that they represent and their activities as cabinet member. Those reports are quite often more than 10 pages long, with 30 or 40 or sometimes 50 or 60 different paragraphs. And members of the council are entitled to ask questions on each numbered paragraph, but there is a limit of 30 minutes. The meeting in question, the reports were very long, and as a result, we only got halfway through some of those annual reports and were not able to ask questions on the whole of the report. It's totally different from a question time. It's a document that you're being asked to report on and take questions on. And I felt that it was completely undemocratic, because in fact there was a shortage of other items on the agenda at that council meeting, and the chairman could have quite easily extended the time for those reports to allow every member who wanted to ask questions on them to ask questions. It was in that respect that I complained that it was stifling democracy, because Councillor Hart had produced a very long, very thorough, very good report, but we were not able to ask him questions on all of it. Council, it is a totally different matter from being able to ask a supplementary question at question time. And certainly, if this council wanted to adopt the idea that cabinet members should give a full report annually to council and take questions on it, I, for one, as a cabinet member, would be perfectly happy with that process. But at the moment, that is not a constitutional position on Wyre Forest.
Thank you, Councillor Oborski. Councillor Dyke, I did say that I'd be going back to the mover now. So I'm not inclined to call you unless you can persuade me that you've got something different to say.
I have got something different to say, Chairman, and I was named in Councillor Desmond's comment, so I would appreciate a chance to speak.
Yes, we are talking about democracy, so yes, carry on.
Sorry, point of order, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Councillor Dyke was named, and therefore her contribution, of course, is going to be limited to what was said in the point of order, because, of course, her blue hand went up well before Councillor Desmond's comments in that respect, and you had clearly said to this council that after Councillor Desmond, it would be the last speaker, and then it would revert to me as the summer-upper. Just seeking clarification, Chairman.
In the spirit of democracy, let's see what Councillor Dyke has to say first.
Yes, just a couple of points. Thank you, Councillor Hart, for reminding me of the Constitution and standing orders. Firstly, I would like to say that nothing in this council, the way this council is running at the moment, prevents any councillor asking any cabinet member any question they wish to ask, or any supplementary or for any information. What it does stop or limits at times is grandstanding, which quite often occurs in the council chamber around any questions that may be asked. Councillor Desmond made the point that the questions that are being asked of cabinet at the moment are obviously answered by officers and then relayed by cabinet members. Well, Councillor Desmond, after 23 years, I think I'm perfectly capable of answering my own questions and not afraid of saying to anyone if I'm not sure of the answer, and I will get back to them. So please don't make sweeping comments that you have absolutely no evidence to back up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dyke. Very relevant indeed. And back to Councillor Hart.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Always a moot point as to what is relevant, but let me say something to this chamber and yourself, Chairman. My summing up will be entirely relevant. And let me start by thanking Peter Young, Councillor Young, for his very kind comments in saying that I made some very good points. And I look forward to his support in this notice of motion in a similar way that he kindly gave it to the Conservative group earlier on in the year with Black Lives Matter, because he's absolutely right. It was absolutely correct and quite reasonable and proportionate, as he says, to amend the Constitution. That was absolutely right back in April of this year, in the same way as it was to have a huge national lockdown back at that time. It is not quite as reasonable and proportionate now to conduct our council affairs in a different way. Councillor Mrs. Zaborski never ceases to amaze me in respect of running with the hares and hunting with the hounds. She quotes a large number of councils up and down the country. Usually, she doesn't want to compare us to anybody else, and if she does, it's the Worcestershire family. She even, because it suits her argument this evening, compares herself to Birmingham City Council, who hitherto, for all of the years I've been on this council, she hasn't had a good word to say about. How disingenuous is that? It is absolutely right that we strike a balance. And I know that our hardworking chief executive and directors and solicitor of the council and IT staff and committee clerks who are servicing this meeting have been at work all day, and it will be a long day for them. It's a long day for many members of this council who've also been out at work all day. And it's absolutely right that looking at a screen for hours on end can be intense, but we can have a comfort break every hour if we needed to. So it is a complete red herring about the timing. And Councillor Mrs. Helen Dyke, and I'm going to use evidence, I'm not going to make any sweeping statements, accusing members, and clearly pointed at the opposition Conservative group now, of grandstanding. The words barefaced and audacity spring to mind, because it's been said by members of my group who've spoken in this debate, if their foot were on the other foot and I was still the leader, just imagine if I was still the leader of this council and we had proposed this, Councillor Zaborski, Councillor Helen Dyke, Councillor Ballinger and others would have been on the front page of the Kidderminster Shuttle. They'd have been on Hereford and Worcester. It would have been an affront to democracy. It would have been outrageous. And, you know, it writes its own script. The sanctimonious hypocrisy is outrageous. Outrageous, Mr. Chairman, and to all of the members of the public watching this debate from the comfort of their own armchair. And the notion that we can ask any question, any time, any supplementary, as Councillor Dyke says, does not pass the giggle test, Mr. Chairman. It doesn't pass the giggle test, because we know pre-COVID, question after question I asked about the new hub at Green Street. I didn't get cogent answers. I didn't get responses. I've written on a number of subjects to various members about localism, about Churchill and Blakedown. I've either not had a reply, not had a satisfactory reply, or had a very snide and unprofessional reply. And that, Mr. Chairman, with the greatest respect, is an affront to democracy. And I'm wrapping up, Chairman, I should be no more than about 15 seconds. What is really an affront to democracy is we've had 4 speakers from the Progressive Alliance out of 19. Not a solitary word from the leader. I can only assume, Mr. Chairman, that silence is acquiescence and that the overwhelming majority are going to support us because they know it's the right thing to do, because they cannot justify not supporting it. And therefore, Mr. Chairman, with the name vote, I so move, and I thank you very much for your indulgence.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Do I have a seconder for the name vote?
I'll formally second that, Chairman.
Thank you. So, members, we're going to take a vote on whether or not to have a named vote on this. All those in favour, please raise your hands. You can let me know, Louisa, what you've got, what numbers you've got.
Yes, if you could just bear with me, Chairman, I'm just getting Aki just to double check the figures.
Chairman, can we just check whether Councillor Julia has her hand up or she's just resting her head, please? Thanks.
Where are you?
My hand was not up, for the record.
We've got 14, Chairman.
14. And those against a named vote, please raise your hands.
And we've got 16 against.
Any abstentions in that case? Please raise your hands if you want to abstain.
We've got one.
Right. That motion therefore has clearly been rejected. We will now take a vote on the notice of motion. Again, in the same way, all those in favour of the motion, please raise your hands.
That's 14, Chairman.
14 for. All those against, please raise your hands.
That's 18 against.
And any abstentions in that case?
We have no abstentions.
Okay, members, in that case, that notice of motion from Councillor Hart has failed. We move on to agenda item 10, which is urgent motions. Can you just confirm that we don't have any urgent motions under standing orders?
There are no urgent motions, Chairman.
Thank you. We're not dealing with agenda item 11. We're on to agenda item 12, which is the policy and budget framework. These appear at page 22 in the agenda, and we'll take them one by one. The first one is the overview and scrutiny, Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy Mid-Year Review report, and this is Councillor Hart.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. I will formally move the recommendations. They were fully considered by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 5th of November, and indeed were considered by the Treasury Management Committee, of which you, of course, chair. And I do think it's custom and practice the chairman of that panel seconds it. So I will say no more and look forward to indeed that happening.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to do that. I will formally second on your suggestion. Does all those in favour please raise your hands?
I'm just waiting for confirmation, Chairman.
Thank you.
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you very much. On to page 23. This is Councillor Oborski.
Yes, Chair. Members will be aware that, in fact, the Public Works Loan Board, we are now recommended, in fact, by government that we should not be borrowing money to invest in properties outside the district at this time. And therefore, we are recommending to Council, it's a capital portfolio fund temporary arrangements for acquisition geography, that until further notice, only within district purchase proposals are considered for the balance of the capital portfolio fund, that the capital strategy is therefore temporarily amended to reflect that, and that for the duration of the period for acquisitions made through the capital portfolio fund, a threshold score of 2 will be used when assessing proposals against the scoring critical matrix. Basically, what we are saying is that for the period that we are putting forward these temporary arrangements, our previous policy that was we would acquire properties within either of the LEPs of which Wild Forest District Council is a member, that is the Greater Birmingham and Solihull LEP and the Worcestershire LEP, that is put aside, and we will only acquire properties within Wild Forest District. As a result of that, we need to amend the threshold score to 200 because it is possible that some of the highest rating of properties, highest scoring of properties, will not be found on the old scoring system within Wild Forest, which is why we're making that subsequent amendment. At some stage in the future, when we are out of this COVID emergency and when budgetary things are a bit more back on an even keel, it may well then be appropriate to go back and revoke these temporary arrangements, go back to the previous policy, which was the LEP policy. But until that time, I move that we approve this recommendation for temporary arrangements for our acquisition.
Thank you, Councillor Oborski. I've got Councillor Hart with his blue hand raised. Are you going to second this, Councillor Hart, or can I take a seconder first before you speak?
Happy if you take a seconder, Chairman.
Thank you. Could I get a seconder, please? Councillor Ballinger? You need to, would you mind taking your... Thank you.
There we go. It's different on this one. Yeah, sorry about that, Chairman. Yeah, I'm pleased to second that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next speaker, Councillor Hart.
Thanks, Chairman. I mean, sorry, I could have seconded this because I do, in fact, support the recommendation to Council this evening. And indeed, of course, you will recall, because you served on the overview and scrutiny meeting, that the recommendation was considered and indeed was supported. And I think it is important to make the point that This is twofold in terms of the presentation to scrutiny. I support it fundamentally as a matter of the change in guidelines, rules, and indeed law, because we have to act within the parameters of the PWLB and indeed have to act in accordance with the law. And regrettably, we aren't a cash-rich council, because if we had £10 million of our own cash in the bank, we could buy capital assets anywhere. But because we don't, and we have to use the PWLB, they are saying it must be in district. The COVID element, I and others of scrutiny, certainly in my party, were less persuaded. We know we are in really difficult and in uncertain times at the moment as a result of COVID. But arguably, to suggest that we are in area purely because of COVID and the risks of it, well, the wider your net, the wider you mitigate those risks. But the recommendation that was from scrutiny didn't split down as to the reason why it was supported, just that the decision to be in area is supported. And it's really helpful and refreshing for Councillor Roborski to say that obviously when things change and if the rules change, we will look within the wider LEP geography, because of course the Progressive Alliance followed the policy of the previous administration to seek to purchase assets within the 2LEP geography. And it's obviously now a temporary change as a result of the PWP. But in all the circumstances, Chairman, my group do support this recommendation to Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Next speaker, Councillor Claire Barnett.
Hi, thank you. I don't actually want to speak. I just need to say I'm really struggling with my sound and my connection tonight. So if I abstain from anything or don't put my hand up, that's why. I don't know whether to leave and try and come back in.
All right. Okay. That's great. Thank you for that. Councillor Roborski, I'm not sure whether you wanted to say anything. You've had one speaker.
Just to thank Marcus for his support. We live in very strange times at the moment, and we don't yet know, apart from COVID, we don't know what the impact of the end of the Brexit transition period on December the 31st is going to be. It may well be that in a few months' time, situation may be different and we'll be able to relook, but this is the right thing to do at the moment.
Thank you. We'll go to a vote then. All those in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hands.
I'm just waiting for clarification, Chairman.
Thank you.
That's all in favour.
Thank you. On to page 24, and this is Councillor Nicky Martin.
Good evening, Council. Apologies if there's two of me on the screen, but my iPad's just frozen, so I'm now on my computer. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Good evening and welcome to councillors and members of the public. I'd like to recommend to Council, with regards to the home working consultation, that note the responses which were submitted in response to the consultation process, and to agree to proceed with the review of teams and the services they deliver, with a view to enabling more individuals to operate on a hybrid model at home and in the office where feasible for employees to do so, and to introduce such working from the 1st of April 2021, or when the government advice is such that a return to working from the office is safe in the event that this is after 1st of April 2021. I was concerned, as for those of you that attended Cabinet, to read some of the responses, and I did take a lot of interest in them, especially those relating to the mental health and the personal circumstances of some of our staff. And whilst this does not necessarily reflect the majority, I am assured and confident that a platform is available for issues to be raised and dealt with going forward. We and other councils across the country find ourselves in times of significant change, some of which are put upon us on a daily basis, especially around our financial position. We want to remain a council that is resilient to such changes, and for that reason need to proceed to explore different ways of working so we continue to be effective for our residents and community. As an administration, we want to explore a smaller office footfall. This is the time is of essence as we want the process to be robust and effective. Our service managers need to start reviewing working arrangements for and with teams in early 2021. And it is for this reason that I am unable to accept the recommendations of the Scrutiny Committee to put it on hold until April 2021. However, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Marcus and his committee for the time that they gave to this subject. It is therefore that I ask Council to support this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Again, I'll get a seconder before I get the speakers. Councillor Dyke.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd like to second the recommendation and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Dyke, can you keep your blue hand raised, just so that I don't forget to call you again. Next speaker then, please, Mike.
Councillor Hart.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. Can I formally move an amendment, please, to this recommendation? And I will pause there to allow the committee clerk to share it on everyone's screen. Good. Now that everyone has it, and indeed the members of the public at home, that in 1.1, I so move that we note the responses which were submitted in response to the consultation process. That is as submitted on page 24, in fact. But that paragraph 1.2 is amended to read, agree to postpone the current review and to reconsider this matter after 21st April 2021 by undertaking a fresh consultation of staff, with any proposals being brought back for full consideration by all members, and any such proposals not being implemented before 1st December 2021, by which time both the national position in respect of the COVID-19 and the financial footprint of WFD should be much clearer.
Councillor Hart, you said 21st, you actually mean 1st of April. Yeah, that's what it says. But you
perhaps I was tongue-tied. No, matter,
yeah.
It's as printed on the as printed.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
I didn't think I said 21st, but apologies if I did. So if I may speak to the amendment, Mr. Chairman, I'm very sorry, and I'm sure members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee will be even more sorry that Councillor Martin says that she's unable to accept the recommendations, because of course she is able. And I hope that, and I know you will, Mr. Chairman, and indeed others agree with me, that we aren't being political here. We had a very, very full Overview and Scrutiny agenda, and all members of the committee, whether they be part of the Progressive Alliance or whether they be blue or all red, supported recommendations on Treasury management, on the Capital Portfolio Fund, indeed on the Green Homes Grant, and similarly, we've supported the first two recommendations tonight unanimously. So this isn't about politics. This is about the facts. Now, look, we should not get and embark upon COVID being used as a red herring in this debate. We know that all of our staff, the overwhelming majority of our office staff, have been working from home. And the government advice in the early days was work from home unless you can't work from home. It then did change to go back to work if you can, but we carried on with home working. And the government then changed the advice again to work from home if you can. And I don't quarrel with that. But in the post-COVID world, what are we going to do? I've never been a fan for kicking the can down the road. So please, nobody accuse me of wanting to do that. I don't want to have to delay or postpone this. but we simply don't know what the picture is going to be like. There are 333 officers who work for this council in terms of headcount, about a 298 full-time equivalent. When the members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee questioned officers on how it would work and whether policy would be that if you are required to work from the office, you must come in, yet a staff member said, I want to work 2 days from home, what would happen? And vice versa, if a staff member said, I only want to work from the office, and the officer, their line manager said, no, you've got to work from home for 2 days a week, what would be the position? What would be our policy? The response that was given was, well, we'd want to work with our staff. Well, clearly we would, and we would like to mutually agree it. Well, clearly we would like to mutually agree it. But what happens if we can't and we don't? What happens if different line managers take different views? This hybrid approach is piecemeal. This is ill thought out. The lack of consultation responses, only 8% of the workforce, and all of those were very lukewarm, and some were, frankly, against this. Again, if the boot were on the other foot, I know that certain members of the Progressive Alliance who are in the executive would be criticising if the Tories were trying to bring this in. What we need to do is have a clearer picture on COVID, indeed have a clearer picture on our budget position. It's going to be proposed by the Strategic Alliance that we commission independent consultants in order to see whether we should sell all or part of Wyre Forest House. We need to get a clearer picture of what our office footprint is about. So let no one be in any mistake that I'm saying that staff should go back to work now in the buildings. We've got to be COVID safe, and we've got to be COVID secure. This is not about COVID. This is about the post-COVID world. And there is a sense that this is being steamrolled through. It's being rushed with little, if any, detail. Now, all of the detail, arguably, is going to be worked up in these proposals, but it's then too late. We do not know what we are signing up to. And I implore Councillor Martin, and I speak, I think, on behalf of every member of that scrutiny committee, because of course there are 10 members on it and 9 voted with the virtual recommendation that was proposed by Councillor Desmond at that meeting. And indeed, in the debate, one would argue that the contributions of all members of that committee raised very grave concerns about this. And there are members across the political spectrum who simply don't support this. And I implore them to support this very measured and sensible proposal to delay this matter so that we can go back to the drawing board, reconsult, and then take a view when we have a much clearer picture. And I so move, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, members. The debate now moves to the amendment. It's just gone off your screen. What I'm going to do is take a seconder on that amended motion. And then if you wish to speak on the amendment, then please raise your hands. So a seconder, Councillor Desmond, your hand is up next. I'm assuming you're going to second this.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me formally second the amendment as printed and reserve my right, please, Chairman.
Okay, if you can keep your blue hand as Councillor Hart has as well. And then we'll take the speakers, please, Mike.
Councillor Griffiths.
Sorry, thank you so much. Yes, thank you. Yeah, just as I was on the overview and scrutiny on that evening, was just in a response, really. I did vote with the motion, but the reason is, in response to sort of what Marcus has said, I only thought, the reason I went with that is 8% I didn't feel was a true and accurate reflection of what people thought about home working. I know a lot of people who work for Wyre Forest who are not councillors, and it's certainly not a reflection of how they feel about home working. So I voted for a fresh consultation because I felt that it would give a more positive and a more reflection of what I know from the people that I know. For me, the hybrid model from People as Value I spoke to is the best of both worlds. I feel departments are doing a great job of supporting staff, and Wyre Forest District Council will continue to do what they have always done and promote and support staff's mental health and well-being. I'm confident that Councillor Martin could not be a better person to bring this forward as a Cabinet Member for Health and Wellbeing. So I will actually be supporting the motion that but I won't be supporting the amendment, because I am quite confident that we are doing everything that we can to be looking after the health and wellbeing of our staff.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Next speaker, please.
Councillor Borski.
Thank you. Well, Chairman, I'm feeling a bit mystified. Earlier this evening, Councillor Hart was very much on his high horse, condemning people, commenting of things in social media. In the last week, he's been all over certain bits of social media, saying how successful he's been in persuading the county council that because of the change in working patterns that will come post-COVID, extra car parking might well not be needed at Blakedown Station, because more people are going to be home working or not permanently working at the office. Now, you're either for home working or you're not, Marcus. Personally, I don't think the amendment should be supported. I believe that it is necessary for us to review teams, because there are a lot of people in our staff who want to have a hybrid working pattern, who actually want to be able to work 2 days a week from home and 3 days in the office, or the other way round, or 2.5 days each way, or some other combination. And all this amendment does is postpones their ability to actually, in their teams, work out how people are going to carry forward their working lives. It actually doesn't help our staff, it hinders them, because it makes it more difficult for people to plan a hybrid working system into the future. And I think that the original motion, which is to introduce the working from the 1st of April, from the start, well, not quite the start of the new financial year, of course, because for some strange reason, financial years actually start on the 5th of April. Don't ask me, ask the Treasury. But I think that the original motion is much fairer to our staff and gives them a much better way of planning their work-life balance. And for that reason, I would urge members to reject the amendment and go with the...
Thank you, Councillor Oborski. Next speaker, please.
Councillor Whitehouse.
Thank you. I'd just like some clarification from somebody. I don't particularly mind who. If the substantive was to go through, are staff expected to adopt that hybrid, or would there be the possibility that they can, if they want to, continue working from home, or would they be expected to adopt that hybrid model? And just going on to another couple of points, I'm finding it fairly difficult to figure out how we can progress this substantive when only, I think, 8% of the workforce has completed it. I don't think you can get a clear understanding of how the workforce feel when only 8% have completed it. I'd be interested to know why it was so low. So I just feel that I'm not necessarily comfortable making a decision for the staff when only 8% have completed, but I would like some clarification around my first point, if somebody could, please.
Yes, I mean, Councillor Martin, do you want to respond now, or do you want to respond now? Okay.
I'll take
Just
it as it is. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse, Councillor Whitehouse, for your questions. It is to consult with the staff. So it's for team and managers to consult with the staff on which part is favourable to them for the hybrid. Do they want half at home, half at work? Do they all want at work, all one at home? And then it's for those managers to take that away and how that best fits in the business going forward. I fully understand some concerns that, you know, some staff would prefer to work at home. And I'm sure, given that we want the smaller footfall, for those that do just want to work from home, so long as that's feasible for the business, that will be fine going forward. But this is for the consultation to start with managers and staff. This isn't to say managers will go in and tell staff how they're working. This is to consult with staff with a robust process. And sorry, excuse me, but I forgot your second question.
Through you, Chair. It wasn't really. Well, actually, yes, it was a question. Can you just clarify the respondents? How many responded? And I think it was 28. I think Councillor Hart said it was 28 at 8%. If that is the case, I think it was mentioned previously, but if you could remind me, why is it only such a small number of staff responded, please?
You're correct. It was 28, which does equate to 8%. And if I'm honest, Councillor Whitehouse, I can't answer why staff don't take up platforms to reply to consultations or whatever. I don't have that answer, but the answer is that it was 28 responses, which equates to 8%.
Okay. Okay, so next speaker, please, Mike.
Councillor Ballinger.
If you come off mute.
No. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've got absolute confidence in Nikki Martin as our cabinet member, that she's so committed to getting this right, this process. She will get it right. It's a very robust stance that she's taken. She's looking at it in great detail. There were issues about the 8% or the 28 staff out of 300. It was the way the questionnaire wasn't a questionnaire, it was just an email request for comments. And so many of the staff, and I know a number of us have received correspondence from staff, they were unhappy that there wasn't an opportunity to say, yeah, it's great what we're doing, we're very happy with what we're doing. There was more, that it was certainly leaning them towards perhaps if they did have any comments, negative comments, and there were a few negative comments. I think at the end of the day, nobody's trying to steamroller this through. This is part of our medium-term financial programme, that we want this to be part of the budget going forward next April, whatever the outcome of the consultation is, whatever the outcome is. And, people will sign up to a hybrid model. We will give appropriate choice where we're able to give choice in discussion with line managers. But at the end of the day, people have spoken about COVID and have said it's a bit of a red herring. It's come up a few times, not necessarily here now, but I know this is just waiting around the corner. Over 600 deaths yesterday. I haven't heard the figures today. I hardly think that's an insignificant red herring. It is a very important in all our lives at the moment, and it's down to us to make sure we get it right. So, this is about getting it right for the staff, getting it right for the business, and moving forward beyond 21, 22 and into the rest of the next 10 years or so. So I urge members to oppose this amendment. It's an irrelevance and it should not be considered seriously. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ballinger. We have a number of speakers. Lisa Jones is the last on the list. If you do wish to speak, please raise your hands now, because we do need to crack on with this. Raise your hands now, otherwise I'll go back to Nathan and then Marcus. So I do apologise, Councillor Desmond, Councillor Hart, and take a vote on the amendments. So next speaker, please.
Councillor Onslow.
Thank you, Chair. I was really surprised when this report came back suggesting that we progress further with the consultation on home working. There were, as has been said several times, 28 responses out of 300 plus staff, which is 8%, which is absolutely no mandate. What I do think is a mandate is that 24 out of the 28 responses were relatively negative about this. Now that's 85%. Now that is a mandate on which we should act. And that 85%, we're not in favour of home working. When it came to scrutiny, 9 out of 10 of us on scrutiny, including, I think, all but one member of the Progressive Alliance, were not happy to progress with a further consultation and completely agreed that the staff had been asked and they had given their views. And yet here we are, it's come back, and we're looking to put it forward to progress. So what I don't understand is, for me, there's two ways of doing things. You either ask people what they think and follow what they say, or tell them what decision you've made and what you're going to do. What we seem to be doing here, and we've done it with the Gainsborough and we've done it with this, is we have a hybrid where we've asked people their views, they've given their views, we then, because it's not what we wanted them to say, we've ignored those views and we're going to do what we want anyway. Absolutely agree with the amendment. It's what went through at scrutiny. It's a cross-party body, and it was agreed what we would do in the amendment. I would urge everybody to support. We have asked the staff, they have said what they want. We shouldn't be going back now and trying to pressurise them to do something else. So absolutely agree with the amendment. And I'm really happy to hear this council say that 8% is no mandate to do anything, because I'll just put the line across here now. The response to the consultation on the Gainsborough was less than 1%. So that's something else that we haven't got a mandate to bring back again. Absolutely happy to support this amendment, and I would urge anybody here who believes in the democratic process to do the same.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Councillor Chambers.
Thank you. As a sitting member on the scrutiny committee, and also as a working mum who has, through COVID, been working from home, I'm a little concerned that we would be quite so quick to bring this report and ignore what scrutiny have said and what our and even though it's 8%, the 8% have said, because number one, from a mental health point of view, people who are it's widely known that people who are suffering from depression through mental health issues, actually, which COVID is, you know, the situation, the pandemic, everything else is generating a higher number of people who are having trouble, you know, anxiety, etc. They don't want to respond. So therefore, our low respondent could be to do with the fact that we're in COVID, but also the positive response that supposedly people have heard, which didn't come out in the consultation, could be from the fact that at the moment there's COVID outside, so I'm safe to stay indoors. Whatever happens, there's a cost to this. There's a cost to people working at home. Not only is it their mental health, but it's also a cost to Wyre Forest District Council, because we have to fund them working from home, i.e. we have to supply them with the correct desk, the correct chair, the correct equipment, etc. And if we're having to do that in the office as well, because they're going to be working 2 days from home and 3 days in the office, or whatever is decided, then surely that's doubling the cost. But my real question is, surely if 9 members of the scrutiny committee all said, actually, maybe we need to hold on a minute, maybe we need to wait until we're a little bit more out of this pandemic and actually make a decision further along the line when things are a little clearer of how the world is going to be, then maybe that's something that as a council of 33 we need to listen to.
Next speaker. Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Next speaker, please.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I feel that certain jobs, certain roles and services will be impacted by this hybrid working, such as the planning department. I have experience with working with many planning departments, and I know that they benefit a huge amount from having a wide range of skilled and knowledgeable people working closely together in one space. I know they are struggling at the moment, trying to be able to put all those skills together and ask advice from different people, such as conservation officer, from enforcement, from different members of the planning officers. I feel that it is hugely important that we keep those teams together, not just planning, but also other departments. I'd like also for members to consider that those, like Councillor Chambers has said, who have children at home, I find it an absolute nightmare, and also who don't have a separate office space. So we're being cramped in little tiny parts of houses where it's not suitable. We're really uncomfortable, and I feel that we owe our officers a more realistic environment to work in, because at the end of the day they're going to be more productive for our residents, and they're going to be happier people because they are all together, they're able to confer with each other, be able to see each other. And I know that some of the departments go out for walks on a lunchtime, and they're not having that time together. So I fully support our amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I often say that.
Councillor Hardiman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I make no apology for, if you like, copying Councillor Tracy Onslow's statements. I think it's appalling that 80-odd% of those people that did respond have said something that I'm afraid you're ignoring. And secondly, I would ask Councillor Martin to explain why she ignored such a concrete statement by the Scrutiny Committee, and she's choosing to ignore it. Could she answer that one, please?
Thank you, Councillor Hardiman. Councillor Martin, do you want to take that now or later?
I can answer that indeed. Thank you, Councillor Hardiman. At no point am I ignoring anything. I think I thanked Marcus for his comments and the fact that the Scrutiny Committee was robust. However, I'm inclined to not agree with him. By not agreeing with him doesn't mean I'm ignoring him. Sorry, Councillor Hardiman, did you say something? I also, with regards to the responses, I'm in regular contact with our HR, mental health, first aid and all things like that. And I categorically know that all managers within the council have regular updates, regular communication platforms with their staff. Those staff, as I previously explained in scrutiny, those staff that were identifiable of the responses have been supported and will continue to be supported going forward. I'm not an ignorant person, Councillor Hardiman.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Next speaker, please.
Councillor Louillier.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to say that I can't support the amendment either. I think that hybrid working really is the way forward for most of us. It seems very sensible, and as long as people have choice and are consulted, then that seems fair. I also wanted to mention to Councillor Onslow, because she seems to keep referring back to the issue with the Gainsborough and the consultation that occurred there, that as a member for that ward as well, it's due to a data issue, not necessarily the results. And I'm sure that everybody wants information, and any decision we make to be based on accurate information, and you'll be furnished with more information, as was said earlier, later as time progresses. So thank you.
Chair, as I've been mentioned, can I just come back about that point?
Well, I mean, this debate has been going on for a while now. I've got I would like to get the other speakers who haven't spoken on this issue, if necessary. I mean, is it? Can you do it in very short
absolutely. I can do it really quickly and say that throughout the whole previous process, Councillor Julie, I would just like to say that I wasn't. It wasn't discussed with me. It wasn't mentioned. I wasn't consulted about the consultation or the wording of the consultation, as in the No Surprises protocol. So I do hope that the Progressive Alliance will follow the No Surprises protocol this time, and those people who represent that ward, particularly those of us who've been representing it for 13 years, will actually be consulted about what we're going to be talking to our residents about.
Right. Okay. I don't want we're now moving away from the actual amendment. So I've got this is a problem. I've got two other speakers, and that's it. I've got Sarah Rook and Chris Rogers. So Councillor Rook.
Hi, just to say I can't vote on this, either of them, because I got my iPad froze and kicked me out, so I haven't heard the whole debate. So sorry about that. I've been gone for about 10 minutes.
Ah, okay. Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Chairman. I find this very hard to follow. I think Councillor Whitehouse, along with others, are absolutely correct in doubting the efficacy of any of this, with just 8% of the staff voicing an opinion, and the few of those that have are against it. I'm also at a loss to understand why it is that Councillor Martin seems to be completely disregarding the whole concept of having a scrutiny committee. In the past, this councillor has not always totally agreed with scrutiny, but she seems to be just completely disregarding scrutiny. We also are in a situation where we have 2 buildings these days with our staff in, and we are discussing the staff that are working in Wye Forest House. The other place, the Green Street Depot, I'm sure the people there would love to work from home, but I'm not sure how our refuge collectors, enforcement officers, tree gangs, etc. have the choice. It seems highly unfair on those people that they don't be given the opportunity to work from home simply because they can't. I have to say I support the whole idea of this amendment because I believe that down the road we're creating a massive can of worms that neither we, the council, nor the staff are going to be happy with. Thank you.
Thank you. Going to move on to Councillor Desmond.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, I'm speaking in my capacity as the seconder.
Yes.
Let me start off with a positive, if I may, Mr. Chairman. This council has been incredibly resolute and effective and efficient the way he has dealt with the COVID pandemic and the changing nature to its working practices. I think, you know, the IT department needs a massive pat on the back, and COVID has obviously shown what can be done. Now, this obviously report has got nothing to do with COVID whatsoever. It is merely set the ground work moving forward for our working practices thereafter for the next 10 years plus. So absolutely has nothing to do with COVID. And what this substantive motion does, it gives a blank check to the council to sign up to a blank check. We simply do not know enough detail. We had a very full and frank debate at scrutiny, and we asked many questions, and we didn't really get in-depth answers. We still do not know exactly what the hybrid system actually means. It is quite nebulous. You know, if somebody wants to work 100% at home, will they be allowed? Will the new system mandate every member of Wyre Forest to work from home, even if they don't want to. You know, there are some fundamental questions there. And I come back to the consultation, and I think the leader, Councillor Ballinger, said, if I'm correct, that it wasn't a full consultation, it was a mere, and I wrote it down, survey. Well, actually, the report at scrutiny makes it clear it was a full and frank consultation, and the responses were quite embarrassing, really, as we have said. 28 responses back, 24 of them were against, most of them were in-depth responses, and at best, Mr. Chairman, it is a lukewarm response. There is no clear mandate, there is no clear steer from our employees that they want to do more home working. And I have a number of issues with home working, because the substantive wants to maximise home working. And I have an issue, managers need to manage. And I don't think they can do that effectively or efficiently from working from home. I think the disconnect as well, right across the different teams, will be great. I also think, you know, teams work better together. Nobody has all the answers, and we are not designed, Mr. Chairman, to work in isolation and in silos. You know, working as a team ethos and building that team rapport and bouncing ideas off each other is absolutely massive. I actually think greater home working will do damage to the overall business of this authority. And I simply do not think there is a mandate and a clear steer from the consultation. What our amendment is doing is simply recognising the poor responses and is pragmatic and puts a pause on it, because obviously going forward is going to be a very difficult 12 to 24 months in terms of the size of the authority, as the leader has said, is going to get smaller. Obviously, as part of their suite, which we'll obviously see next week, there is a implication on Wyre Forest House, and obviously our building size could be smaller, and therefore, you know, this is putting the cart before the horse, Mr. Chairman. I absolutely think the amendment before members tonight is the right thing. It's pragmatic that we pause it. And we respect the consultation and the lack of enthusiasm that we have seen from our own employees. But I have posed 2 questions to the relevant cabinet member, Councillor Martin. I hope she has wrote those down. I can repeat them again, but I would like answers to those questions, please.
Okay, Councillor Martin.
Chairman, could we go to suspension of standing orders before we bring Councillor Martin in, please?
Yes. Okay. Could I have a proposal for suspension of standing order?
I'll propose that, Chair.
Okay, and a seconder, please.
I'll second it.
Chair.
Okay. Councillor Eddington White, I heard first. Is that agreed? If you could raise your hands.
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Martin, do you want to respond to Councillor Desmond's question? I'm afraid I haven't written them down either, so I don't know.
I'm afraid I haven't. If you'd like to repeat them, please.
More than happy to, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sure you are.
The first question. Quickly, absolutely. Yes. Right. The first question was on the hybrid system. What exactly does a hybrid system mean in practice, please? And on the back of that, will any member of staff be mandated to work from home, even if they do not want to? And vice versa as well, if a member of staff wants to work from home. 3
questions.
Is what?
3 questions.
Well,
sorry, carry on.
It's democracy and accountability. And will any member of staff, if they want to, work 100% at home? Would that be permissible?
Okay.
I'll do my best, Councillor Desmond. A hybrid system is the best of both worlds. That's the best of both worlds for our staff and the best of both worlds for our business going forward. I will sit here and say that at no point would I want a mandate that somebody will be told that they will have to work from home if that's not their preferred option. This is a consultation. This will be a robust consultation. And going forward, it will be the best for both members of staff and business. At no point do I want somebody to have to work from home all of the time when actually, due to their mental health and their business, that they do need to be in the office. It is a consultation. It will be, every member of staff will be consulted with a robust system. Does that answer your questions, Mr. Councillor Desmond?
I think it does. Thank you for that. So, Councillor Hart, to summarise on the amendment, it's been a healthy debate. I hope you can keep this as short as possible.
I'll try, Chairman, but of course we don't want to stifle
we don't
democracy.
Indeed.
Let me try and do the best I can. I'm allergic to horses, Councillor Borski, so let me assure you I certainly wouldn't be on a high horse. And indeed, certainly not a band wagon. And indeed, in terms of social media, I was referring to the abusive and offensive and derogatory spats that seem to appear on Facebook, not a legitimate statement on a website. Now, Wyre Forest House. I've been around a long time, and many members across the political divide supported moving to Wyre Forest House. We had 6+ offices previously. The silo mentality. Won't it be great when we've got all our teams under one roof? You know, the solicitor who needs to walk round to speak to an accountant, to speak to one of our rangers, to speak to our planners. The water cooler conversations that we place so much truck on are suddenly moving out and being thrown out of the window. The word hybrid. The best of both worlds. I wish somebody could tell me which is in either world, because the phrase can of worms is entirely apt. And whilst, of course, it's always a moot point, and I'm grateful for Councillor Nikki Martin thanking me in the work of the Scrutiny Committee, and she's very keen to say that she's not ignoring me, that she's just not agreeing with me. Well, let's take her argument at its highest. Let's say that she's had cogent regard and considered what I've got to say, but she simply disagrees with me. But she also disagrees with her own group member, Councillor Griffiths, her own Stourport colleague, Councillor Dixon Shepherd, who spoke so vociferously and persuasively and learned in respect to this matter, and Councillor Mary Rayner and Councillor Carn Edgington White, to name but the non-Conservatives who didn't support this proposal. And indeed, it's a shame Councillor Rook isn't going to take part, and I respect the reason why. I had a similar problem at planning, because we don't agree on much, but we were united. You couldn't put a cigarette paper between us at scrutiny, and I suspect if she was able to participate, that would be the same this evening. Look, COVID is a national tragedy. I'm not decrying the deaths locally and nationally, but Councillor Ballinger, the leader himself, made reference to, you know, we're looking at for the future, for the next 10 years. Well, God willing, we won't have COVID threatening our daily lives in 10 months, let alone 10 years. This is about the post-COVID world. I thought we'd actually got a commitment on policy from Councillor Rayner when she said no staff member will be mandated to work from home, a clear policy statement, but then all of the time. So we still don't have clarity, because that suggests to me that actually staff member X, you will have to work from home for a couple of days, because we've got the caveat and proviso in all of the time. And with the greatest respect, the consultation has happened. The recommendation in the amendment, we haven't even got back to the substantive, doesn't make reference to the word consultation. It says to agree with, proceed with a review of teams and the services they deliver. That will be discussions with service managers. The consultation is over. The officers of this council, the senior officers and leadership team, will have to implement it now. And therefore, there's going to be no further consultation because that's being spoken against in my amendment on behalf of the group. So I implore all of those very sensible members of the Progressive Alliance that supported the position at scrutiny to hold firm and resolute tonight and support this very well-founded, made-out amendment in the interests of all of our staff and the wider Wyre Forest. And I so move, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hart. Now, we're going to go to a vote on the amendment. We have no other speakers that I'm going to call. So we're going to go for a vote on the amendment. The amendment was on our screens for quite a while. I don't propose to put them back on unless anyone wants to have another look at it. No, so all those in favour of the amendment, please raise your hands.
I'm just waiting for confirmation, Chairman.
Thank you.
And that's 13 in favour.
Okay. And now all those against the amendment.
That's 18 against.
And are there any abstentions?
I'm just waiting. Oh, we've got 2 abstentions.
2. Thank you. Members, that amendment has clearly failed. We're back to the substantive. And we have, yes, Councillor Hart, do you wish to speak on the substantive?
Yes, very briefly, just to say, obviously, democracy is about having your say, not necessarily your way. And of course, we do respect that on the blue side of the chamber. Our amendment has lost, but given that we are so poles apart in our amendment, I'm afraid neither I nor the Conservative group can conceivably or even possibly consider supporting the substantive, and therefore I will not, nor will the group be doing so.
Okay. Now, there are no other hands raised. So we'll go back to Councillor Dyke to summarise, not to summarise, sorry, because I believe you wanted to reserve your right to speak.
I did, thank you, Chairman, but I'm quite happy to pass that over. Thank you.
Thank you. And then back to Councillor Martin, if you wanted to summarise.
Yes, thank you. For the past 9 months as a council and wider community, we've had to adapt and accept different ways and methods of going about our daily lives. Some will have learned that they are far more resilient than they thought. Some will have and continue to struggle with not being able to maintain the status quo. Whichever bracket you find yourself in, change has occurred. We have to accept some parts of our lifestyle has changed for good, no going back. Regardless of if and when COVID will be brought under control, we'll never go back to the way we were, and our focus should shift to what the minimum office looks and how best to support our staff and business within that transition. We need to start this exploration with immediate effect so that we can embed new ways of working collaboratively, streamline governance, which will provide faster decision making, and develop new employment models such as times and days. Also, this will attract more talent, which makes us an attractive employer. We should be embracing change with our staff. I know change can be daunting for some. However, if we can see ourselves to adjusting to the new normal, we will have a say and be part of the new ways of working. This will provide high trust management, which will ensure we are not micromanaging. Scrutiny received data back in just before summer that explained that there was no suggestion that our performance and productivity suffered as a result of home working since March 2020. COVID has demonstrated and reaffirmed that our staff at Wyre Forest are conscientious, trustworthy, and get the job done effectively. The hybrid way of working is going to allow staff greater choice about how they manage their work-life balance. This will increase well-being and other circumstances for those individuals. Less commute time, better for the environment, and continue to meet the business needs effectively while supporting efforts to reduce the size and cost of our office accommodation. I ask my fellow councillors to agree to this review. Let our managers and their teams get on with exploring what a new working landscape looks like, hybrid being the best of both. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. We're now going to take a vote on the recommendations as printed on page 24. All those in favour, please raise your hands.
That's 18 in favour, Chairman.
Thank you. And all those against?
That's 13 against.
And any abstentions?
We have one.
One abstention. Thank you, members. That recommendation to council has clearly been carried. On to page 25, and this is Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully this is a lot more simpler. This is to amend the capital portfolio, the capital programme to enable a bigger distribution of the Greens Home Grant. This is to enable our community and our residents to better equip their homes for a greener living, cut down on their heating bills, and I so move that this be recommended.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. A seconder I need next, Councillor Caulfield.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I'm very happy to second this. This is a really great project to be doing, and thanks to the officers. I know they've worked hard to bring this scheme to fruition. As Councillor Martin said, being able to retrofit as many homes as we can with these energy efficiency measures will reduce our emissions, but equally as importantly, it will reduce fuel bills. So I'm really pleased that it's targeted at households with a lower income. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Caulfield. We'll take speakers next. At the moment, we've got two blue hands. If you wish to speak, please raise your hands now so we can get this moving along. Next speaker, please, Mike.
Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Chairman. I was quite happy to second this because, of course, this went to scrutiny and was unanimously supported by scrutiny. And this is great news. And I've no doubt that this may very well be unanimous this evening. And forgive me for sounding a little like a broken record, because I know that you called Councillor Vicky Caulfield our Green party councillor before me to second this. But of course, no one party has the monopoly on the green agenda and on wanting to care for our environment. And we all recognise the issues with the green agenda, and we all recognise issues around climate change, and that as a nation we must change. And that's why the national government is making such a capital commitment nationally, and it's why we as Conservatives fully support this. It is great news that the government department is funding this grant. It's great news that we are receiving £200,000, and of course we've given ourselves some wriggle room because if the other districts across the county are not as proactive as we are, we might be able to hoover up a bit of their money, which is even better. This is great news, and I have no doubt that the private sector housing team will deliver these grants, and clearly it will be on a financial eligibility, basis, so that those who can not afford to do this can get it and make the benefit of the grant. So it's good news, and we should thank our government for this money for our residents accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. It wasn't a political move by me, though. I think the minutes can show that obviously had Councillor Hart been called before Councillor Caulfield, he would have seconded. I think that would be sufficient for that purpose. Next speaker, please.
Councillor Borski.
Thank you. I mean, I'm absolutely delighted with this scheme, but we're all being told that I think it's by 2030 we've got to phase out gas boilers in houses, and for those who are not going to be eligible for this particular grant, we're told that there is a grant available of I think up to £5,000 for you to replace your existing gas boiler with an air source heat pump. As I've already got solar panels, I was contacted by the company who fitted them to ask me if I wanted to have a look at the idea of having a survey and having an air source heat pump fitted. So I said yes, only to be told when they came that, well, your boiler is less than 3 years old. The air source heat pump is going to cost you more than £10,000, and we don't recommend it because you've got an efficient boiler. Now, actually, well, I don't particularly want to shell out £5,000 or £6,000 of my own, and I gather that that's the sort of thing I'd have to shell out. But I am actually worried that whilst I'm very grateful for the initiative the government's taken so far, if we are actually going to achieve as a country the by 2030 not using gas boilers, moving people to air source heat pumps, we are going to have a far greater national investment into it, because there can't be a lot of people around who, when faced with a bill of £10,000, will accept that a £5,000 grant is fine and they'll pay the rest. I do hope that this government grant that we're seeing now is actually expanded in the future, because I think it's incredibly important that we get away from using gas for heating, which is what this is really aimed at. But we've got to be much more serious about it, I think, than as a country than we are at the moment. So I welcome this as a start. I'm really pleased at the work that our council officers are doing, but it may not be a party political issue, but it's a national emergency issue. It's a climate change issue that we absolutely must get as many of our properties onto air source heat pumps as we can as soon as possible, because actually domestic heating is playing an enormous role in increasing our carbon footprint as a nation.
Thank you, Councillor Borski. Next speaker, please.
Councillor Whitehouse.
Thank you. Very quick point from me. I'm very happy with this. From my perspective, if you do a little bit of thinking on this, ultimately the bottom line is it will inevitably put more money in the back pocket of those living in Wyre Forest who are living in poverty, and hopefully significantly reducing some of their energy bills. So absolutely delighted to see this and fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehouse. Next speaker, please.
Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that this is obviously not the first time that this Greener Living grant has come to Wyre Forest, because I myself took up the chance to have solid wall insulation fitted 4 years ago, because it does make such a massive difference. And our friends at Community Housing took up a lot. They put in a lot of solid wall insulation at that point, and it does make a massive difference to your home. It is, however, as was brought up, it is part funded by the homeowner, which is at a cost. But anything that can be done to keep the cold from the door is very welcome. And this money coming from central government is definitely more than welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. There are no other speakers, which means I'll go back to Councillor Martin to see if she would like to summarise. Otherwise, we'll go to a vote.
No, I don't feel the need to summarise. I think everybody understands how important this is to our residents and to the environment, and I thank you all for your support.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. So the recommendations are as printed on page 25. All those in favour, please raise your hands.
I'm just waiting for confirmation. That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. The other item is the recommendations from the Licensing and Environmental Committee, which was to follow. I think that arrived a couple of days ago by email. Councillor Peter Dyke.
Good evening, all. I would like to recommend to Council the proposals for fees and charges within the Council's licensing, food, health, safety and pollution control functions for 2021 report to be included in the Council's 2021-22 budget strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dyke. I need a seconder. I don't have a note of a seconder. Councillor Whitehouse, are you going to second this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to second this. Being a member of the Licensing Committee, it was confirmed that there is I will stand corrected if I'm wrong, but I understand that there's going to be no increase in any of the fees, and more than happy to second this. Thank you.
Okay. I don't have any other speakers. I don't see any need to go back to Councillor Dyke. Oh, Councillor Edgington-White, did you want to speak on this?
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
Just basically on the comment that's just been made, there was one minor amendment, and it was repeat offenders with dogs, just for clarity.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Edgington-White. Councillor Dyke, did you want to summarise at all, now that you've had one speaker?
No, it's difficult really, because the meeting was on Monday and we didn't get the report from just afterwards. It doesn't give a lot of people a lot of time to look at it, but it was basically the same as the year before, apart from those 2 points which Councillor Edgington-White has just mentioned. And the Niall from Regulatory Services explained that to us. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Dyke. So it's been moved and seconded. It's, members should have this on their devices if they haven't got it on paper. And it's been read out by Councillor Dyke. All those in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hands.
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, back to the agenda then. Agenda item 13, I don't believe we have any other business to consider. Will the solicitor confirm?
I confirm, Chairman.
Thank you. And therefore, there is nothing in the exempt. Also, solicitor to confirm.
I confirm, nothing in the exempt, Chairman.
Thank you. And that's it, members. What a year it's been. It's flown by as far as I'm concerned. Can I wish everyone as good a Christmas as possible and as good a New Year as possible, but please stay safe. And we'll see you in the new year. Good evening.
Thank you, Chair. And
Thank you,
for
Chair.
you.
Thank
you.
Have-
Goodbye.
Happy Christmas.
Thank you.